The sea is keeping the last of the light. Out past the shallows, the water has gone the color of old pewter. The low sun lies along it in a single long bar that shifts and never quite breaks. There is no land in sight tonight. There is only this, a flat gray shine going out to the edge of everything. The slow lift and fall of it beneath you. Good evening, and welcome to Worlds Before Morning. Wherever the day left you, you can set it down now. Turn the pillow to the cool side. Let your shoulders come away from your ears. Let your jaw go loose, and breathe out a little longer than you breathed in. Nothing here needs you awake. The water under us tonight is deep. Drop a stone from where we are floating, and it would fall for the better part of an hour before it touched anything. The floor of the ocean lies more than 2 miles down on average. In the wide middle of the Pacific, it lies deeper still. Everything between here and there is water. Almost all of that water is dark, and almost none of it has ever been seen. We will take the whole distance tonight slowly, and we will not hurry any part of it. A little after dusk, the largest movement of living bodies on this planet gets underway. It happens every night, whether or not anyone is there to notice. Much further down, we will come out onto a soft gray plain where a whale has settled into the sediment. That single arrival will keep a small crowd of animals fed for longer than most people stay in one house. Lower still, in water that has never held one ray of sunlight, we will find warm springs. There are gardens growing around them, fed by the planet itself instead of by the sky. On the surface, the night will behave the way nights do. The light will go, the stars will come out, the gray will return before the sun. None of that reaches the place we are going. There is no evening down there and no morning down there, and there never has been. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. If these long nights help you rest, leaving a subscribe behind is a kind thing to do, and it costs you a moment. That is the only time tonight this recording will ask you for anything. From here on there is nothing but water, and quiet, and one voice going down beside you. Close your eyes whenever you like. You do not need to follow the words to stay with them. If you drift off in the second hour or the first, the descent goes on without you and finishes just the same. We start at the top in the last light. Lie back on the surface for a moment before anything else. The water holds you at the ribs and the back of the head, cool along the spine, warmer where the day has been sitting on it all afternoon. Salt dries tight on your lips. When you turn your face sideways, the horizon comes level with your eye, and the whole ocean becomes one thin line. The sun is going down without ceremony. It touches the water, flattens a little at the base and slides. Color drains out of the sky from the east first, the way it always does. The blue there deepens towards something closer to ink. Out west there is still a long orange smear low down, and it lies on the water in pieces, breaking and joining, breaking and joining. Underneath you, the light is already leaving faster than it is leaving the sky. Water is greedy about light. Red goes first, in the top few feet, so that anything red down there stops being red and turns a soft, dull brown. Orange follows. Yellow lasts a little longer, then green, and then only blue is left, traveling on alone into the dark. Put your face in the water and open your eyes. Everything below you is blue and getting bluer. Small things drift past your mask, so small they are barely there. Flecks and threads and specks that catch the last light and let it go. Some of them are animals no bigger than a grain of sand. Some are plants of a kind, single cells, the ones that make a good share of the oxygen in the breath you just took. Lift your head again. The air is cooler than the water now, and the difference is a line drawn across your face at the water line. Wind has dropped to almost nothing. There are no waves worth the name, only a long, low swell that came from a storm somewhere far off, days ago, and has been traveling ever since without breaking. The gulls that were here at 4 in the afternoon are gone. Nothing is calling. The only sound is the small slap of water at your ear when the swell lifts you. It comes at a regular pace, and it does not change. Below your feet, the blue keeps going down. At about 600 feet, what gets through would still be enough for your eye, given all night to adjust. There are animals down there whose eyes have had far longer than that. Below 1,000 feet or so, the last of it thins out to almost nothing. Below 3,000, there is none at all, ever, anywhere on any day of the year. That is where we are going. Not tonight only, but always. The surface will do its whole performance overhead. The dark and the stars and the gray and the sun. The deep will take no notice of any of it, because it never has. The last orange goes out of the west. The water under you turns the color of the sky above it, which is to say almost black. The two of them stop being separate things. The first few feet are still warm. Let yourself sink a little. The swell smooths out as the light goes. That happens more often than you would think. On open water, at the change of the day, the wind that has been pushing all afternoon lies down at dusk, and the surface loses its texture. And for a stretch of an hour or so, the whole sea goes almost flat. Flat is not still. The long swell is still under there, lifting you and setting you down again with a patience that has nothing to do with the weather here. It comes maybe every 12 seconds. Once you notice the rhythm, you cannot lose it. Your body starts to count it without being asked. The way it counts your own breathing when the room is quiet. Above you, the sky has gone through violet and out the other side. First stars, 3 or 4 of them, low and unsteady. Then more. Out here there is no land and no lamp anywhere. So there are far more of them than most people ever see. They come out in layers rather than all at once, faint ones filling in behind bright ones for the next half hour. The water gives them back, not sharply, because even flat water is never a mirror, but in soft smears that wobble and reform. When you move your hand under the surface, the smears break into rings and travel outward from your wrist, and where they go, other things happen. The wake of your hand starts to glow. It is faint and it is blue-green, and it is coming from the water itself. Countless single-celled drifters in the top layer of the sea make light when they are jostled, and a moving hand is jostling enough. Pull your fingers through the water again and the same soft spark follows them, gone in a second, then gone completely. Sailors have written about this for as long as there have been sailors writing. It is one of the few things about the ocean that people got right long before anyone could explain it. The smell up here is clean and slightly mineral, salt and cold iron, with something faintly green under it. That green note is life, in enormous quantity, too small to see. The top of the ocean is thick with it, in a way the middle and bottom never are. Below your feet, though, the picture is already changing. The blue has stopped being blue and become a color with no good name. The last shade before there is nothing. Things are moving up through it. Not fast, just steadily and in numbers from very far down. They have been waiting for this all day. A star drifts across your knee and puts itself back together. The surface holds its flat shine. Think of the sunlit part of the ocean as one room in an enormous house. It is a bright room. It is also a very thin one. The light that matters, the light green things can actually work with, runs out somewhere in the first 600 feet. Below that there is glow but no business, and below 3,000 feet there is nothing. So the working, growing, sunlit part of the ocean is a skin, set against the whole depth of the water beneath it. That lit layer is about 1 part in 20. Everything else in the sea depends on what happens inside it. hang there in the middle of it for a while. Late dusk now, and what is left of the light comes from above as a soft gray blue that has no direction. Your hands, held out in front of you, have lost their color. There is a slight resistance when you turn them, a thickness to the water that air never has, the sensation of being held on every side at once. This room is crowded, not in any way you can see clearly, but the water passing your face is not empty water. A single cupped handful holds thousands of living things. Most are single cells that were busy all day with the sun and are quiet now. Among them drift the small shrimp-like animals called copepods, no longer than a grain of rice, with long feelers and a jerky way of moving. There are more of them in the ocean than almost anything else you could count. They eat the cells. Small fish eat them. Larger fish eat those, and something larger again waits for those. The chain goes up in a few short steps to the animals that people write books about. All of it starts here, in this thin, bright room, with sunlight and a cell too small to see, which is why what happens next is worth watching properly. Everything below this layer, all those miles of it, gets nothing directly from the sun. Not one calorie arrives down there by light. It has to be carried, and it gets carried in two ways. It falls or it swims. Tonight we will follow both. The water around you is cooling. As the last warmth of the day goes out of it, you can feel the change on the back of your neck first, a slow spreading coolness, and it does not come in a rush. It arrives the way evening arrives in a house with thick walls. Look down once more before the light goes entirely. There is a fleck drifting past your shoulder, pale and slow, turning over as it falls. Then another, then several at different distances, all of them going the same way. It has started snowing. The flakes are small, most of them. Some are the size of a crumb. A few are as broad as your thumbnail, and they hold together in loose, ragged shapes that a current would take apart in a moment. They do not hurry. Each one turns slowly as it goes, catching what light is left, then losing it. This is marine snow, and it falls every hour of every day, everywhere in the open ocean. It has been falling for as long as there has been an ocean with life in it. Reach out and let one land on your palm. It weighs nothing at all. It is soft and slightly sticky, and if you close your hand, it is gone. What you were holding was the leftovers of the lit room above, the empty shells of cells that finished their work, the cast-off skins of small animals, scraps of a jelly that came apart, the waste of everything that ate this afternoon. Bacteria hold it together and travel with it. Out in the open, it drifts down at a pace that has no comparison on land. A flake covers something between 10 and a couple of 100 meters in a whole day, held up by nothing but the thickness of the water. Follow one flake with your eyes. It takes a long time to leave you. A grain of the finest sediment, falling on its own, might take decades to reach the bottom of deep water. Bound into a larger flake, the same material can arrive in a matter of weeks. Nobody watching a single flake can tell which sort it is. The important part is that it never stops. In the time it takes you to fall asleep tonight, an unbroken drift of it will pass every depth in this ocean. In the morning, it will still be going. It will still be going next winter. Almost all of it gets eaten on the way. Animals at every depth hang in the water and wait, doing very little, letting the food come to them. Something like 9 parts in 10 of what leaves the sunlit layer never makes it to the floor. What does arrives as a thin, steady rain that feeds everything below. It is one of the reasons the deep sea has any inhabitants at all. The rest of the reason is stranger, and it is starting right now, somewhere under your feet. Turn your face down into the water and hold still. The blue has almost gone. Against what is left of it there are shapes rising, hundreds of feet below, small dark commas moving upward in a way that is nothing like drifting. They are not one or two. They are a layer, a whole floor of the ocean lifting toward you, and it stretches out of sight in every direction. For the animals in that rising layer, night is a door that opens once a day, and it has just opened. The snow keeps coming down past them as they climb. Neither one gets in the other's way. They come up through the last of the dusk, and they keep coming for well over an hour. Lanternfish mostly, in this patch of water. Each one is shorter than your finger, dark-backed, with a row of small round lights set along the belly like stitches. There are squid among them, no longer than a hand, moving in short jets. There are shrimp the color of dried rose petals, and jellies pulsing along at their own pace, and swarms of copepods so thick that the water where they pass has a grain to it, like snow in headlights. Hold still and let them come. One lanternfish rises past your arm close enough that you can see the row of lights go dim and bright, and dim again. It does not startle. It has no interest in you at all. Whatever it is doing has been the same task every night of its life. This is the largest movement of animals anywhere on Earth, and almost nobody sees it. Roughly the same thing happens in every ocean on the planet at the same hour, local time, wherever local dusk happens to be. It moves around the world once a day, a wave of rising bodies chasing the shadow. The reason is simple enough. Up here in the top layer the food is. Down there in the blue-black at 1,000 feet and more, the safety is. So the animals spend the day deep and dim, where a hunting eye has almost nothing to work with. They come up under cover of darkness to eat, and they go back down before the light returns. The commute is a few hundred feet for some and several thousand for others, made twice a day, in a body that weighs less than a coin. For a lanternfish, that trip is the whole shape of existence. Up at dark, feed in the cold, black water near the top, down again before gray. No day of rest, no season off, from the first weeks of life until the last. The bulk of them is enough to fool machines. When ships first started using sound to measure the depth of the ocean, the readings kept coming back wrong. There seemed to be a false floor a few hundred fathoms down, and worse, the floor moved. It rose in the evening and sank at dawn. Crews called it the deep scattering layer, and for a while nobody could say what it was. It was fish, hundreds of millions of tons of small fish and their neighbors, packed thickly enough to bounce sound the way a seabed does. There is a second thing they do, without meaning to. Everything that feeds up here at night and sinks back down by day carries carbon with it in its body and leaves it behind in the deep. That daily elevator moves a great deal of material away from the surface. How much exactly is still argued over, and the honest answer is that the ocean is large and the measurements are hard. The last of them arrive around full dark. The water above you is busier now than it was all afternoon, and it is quiet business, without a sound to it. We are going the other way. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. Turn over and let your feet lead. Going down is the easiest movement there is. You do not have to do anything but stop keeping yourself up. The surface closes over your head, with a small sound like a door in another room. Above you it becomes a ceiling, silver gray and rippled from underneath, showing you the stars in fragments that will not hold still. That ceiling is the last familiar thing. Watch it for a moment while it is still overhead, because in 10 minutes it will be a pale smudge, and in 20 it will be gone. The first 100 feet go by quickly. Pressure arrives politely, first as a firmness in the ears, and then as a general sense of being held closer than before. Nothing hurts. The water thickens against your shoulders as you descend, or seems to. What is actually happening is that it is getting colder, and cold water is a slightly heavier, slower thing. At 200 feet, the color of everything has changed. Your own hands are gray. The gold band on your finger is gray. A drop of red paint down here would be black, and a red fish down here is invisible, which is exactly why so many animals below this line are red. At 400 feet, the light coming down is a deep, unbroken blue with no source in it. It does not come from a sun anymore. It comes from everywhere at once, like the glow inside a snowdrift, and it is dimming steadily as you go. The temperature drops in steps rather than smoothly. Somewhere below 300 feet, you pass a boundary, where the warm surface water gives way to the cold underneath. The change is sharp enough to feel as a line drawn across the body, cool at the feet while the shoulders are still warm. Below it, the ocean is cold and stays cold, all the way to the bottom, everywhere in the world. Sounds change too. On the surface, you had slapping water and wind. Here there is none of that. There is a low, wide, continuous hush with no direction, made of distant weather and distant waves, and the movement of enormous volumes of water against each other. Somewhere in it, faintly, there is a series of clicks. A dolphin or a small whale working with sound, a good way off. The clicks come in trains, then stop, then start again. Snow keeps falling past you. It falls at the same rate here as it did up there. It will fall at the same rate at every depth for the rest of the night. The blue overhead has become the only blue left, a lid of it far above. Every other direction is now a color that has no light in it. You are 500 feet down, then 6. The last of your shadow left you a long way back. Nothing here is in a hurry. Nothing here is going to be. Let the descent take you. There is a great deal of night below. Somewhere below 600 feet, the light stops being light and becomes a memory of it. Hold there a moment. Turn your face up. The color above you is blue in the way that a deep well is blue at noon, thin and even, with no bright spot anywhere in it to say which way the sky went. Turn your face down, and there is no color at all. You are hanging at the join between the two, and it is the last place in the ocean where those two things are different. This stretch of water has a name that fits it. The twilight zone runs from roughly 600 feet down to about 3,000. It is the largest single living space on the planet, not the largest ocean layer, the largest living space of any kind anywhere, by a wide margin. More animals live in this dim band than in every forest and field and reef put together. The great majority of them are smaller than your hand. Your body knows it is somewhere new. The water is cold now, properly cold, the kind that presses on the sinuses behind your face and makes the top of the head feel tight. There is a steady, even pressure on your chest that does not build or ease. It is not unpleasant. It is more like being held firmly by something very large that means nothing by it. Sound has changed again. The clicks from earlier are gone. What remains is a wide, low hum that seems to come from behind your ears, so constant that after a minute you stop hearing it, and then notice it again when you think of it. For most of the history of people going to sea, nothing was known about any of this. The old assumption held that below a few hundred fathoms the water was empty, too cold and too heavy for anything to live in. That idea lasted well into the 1800s, argued for by careful people. It came apart slowly, cable by cable. Ships hauled up sounding lines with small animals clinging to them, from depths that were supposed to be barren. The layer you are hanging in now was one of the last places on Earth anyone thought to look. Look sideways, level with your own eyes. In that direction, the water shades from a hint of blue to nothing at all, and the change happens within an arm's length of vision. There is no horizon here. There is no floor, and no ceiling within reach of the eye. Depth is the only direction that means anything, and even that you can only tell by the pressure in your ears. Something passes below you, sideways, unlit, seen only as a shape that briefly makes the dimness dimmer. Then it is gone, without a ripple you can feel. This is the last of the blue. Below this, the ocean does not do color anymore. It has not done color anywhere down there for as long as there has been water on this planet. Whatever light exists further down will be light that living things make for themselves. Let out a breath. Feel the small tug as the bubbles leave, silver, rolling upward, catching the last of the blue on their long, slow way back to a surface you can no longer see. Down we go. The color goes with them. There is not much light here. There is a little. The difference between a little and none is the entire design problem of this depth. It has been solved over and over by animals that have nothing else in common. The first solution is size. A hatchetfish is a flat silver creature no bigger than a matchbox, and a good share of its head is eye. The eyes point up. They are shaped like small telescopes, deep and narrow, gathering the faint gray coming from above rather than looking sideways into the dark. It is watching the ceiling all its life, for shapes crossing what light is left. Hold your hand between your face and the far-off surface glow. Notice how your hand goes black and how sharply its outline stands out against that dimness. That silhouette is the whole game. Down here, almost nothing is spotted directly. Things are spotted as gaps in the light, which explains the second solution, and it is a strange one. A great many animals in this layer carry rows of small lights along their undersides, pointed down. They glow at exactly the brightness of the water above them, no more and no less. Seen from below, the animal stops being a shadow and becomes just more dim blue sky. Some can dim the lights as the surface light dims, adjusting through the evening, matching themselves to a sky they cannot see. Nobody had a word for that behavior until quite recently, and the name is simple enough. They are lighting themselves to disappear. Then there is the matter of red. Down here, red light does not exist, so red bodies reflect nothing and look black. A red shrimp in this water is a shrimp that is not there. Deep red pigment is one of the most common colors in the twilight zone for exactly that reason. It is a color nobody ever sees. There are eyes here that break the pattern too. A few fish carry eyes that point two ways at once. One lobe looks up for silhouettes. The other looks down for the small flashes below. There is a barrel-eyed fish with a see-through head, and its eyes sit inside the head, looking up through it. They can swivel forward when the animal needs to see where it is going. That head was known for 100 years before anyone watched the eyes move. The delicate part collapses when the animal is brought up in a net. Somebody had to go down with a camera and be patient. That is the honest shape of most of what is known about this depth. Almost nothing here has been watched living for long. A great deal of what fills the books came from nets, from stomachs, from broken specimens in jars, and the living animal often turns out to behave nothing like the wreck of it that reached the surface. Eyes have had all of that time to work on the problem. Something small blinks below your knee twice and stops. There, off to the left, at the edge of where you can see anything at all, a blue-green spark, not much brighter than a phone screen seen through a curtain, on for a second and then gone. Another further off deeper, then two together, close and quick, and then nothing for a long moment. Keep watching. They come at their own pace, and they never come on cue. After a few minutes, your eyes begin to give up on the old business of shapes and outlines, and start doing the only work available, which is noticing single points of light against a black field. It is much closer to looking at a night sky than to looking at anything underwater. Most of the light down here is blue-green, and there is a plain reason for it. Blue-green travels furthest through seawater. Anything that wanted to be seen at a distance in this ocean had to arrive at that color eventually. A great many separate lineages did, none of them copying the others. The light is made by a chemical meeting. There is a compound and something to trigger it, and when the two come together, they give off light with almost no heat. The efficiency is remarkable. Very little of the energy is lost, which matters enormously to an animal that eats twice a week and cannot spare anything. Some animals make the light themselves in small organs called photophores, each one with a lens on the front and a mirror behind, built like a tiny lamp. Others do not make it at all. They keep bacteria that glow, housed in pockets on the body, fed and sheltered, in exchange for a steady blue shine that the animal can hide or reveal with a fold of skin. On their own, adrift and scattered, those bacteria stay dark. They only light up once there are enough of them packed together, which is exactly what the pocket provides. Being kept is a better arrangement for them than drifting. The part that changes how you picture the ocean is how ordinary it is. Surveys off the coast of California, counting everything a camera saw over many years, found that about 3/4 of the animals in this water make light. 3 out of 4. Not a rare trick of a few odd fish, but the standard equipment of the most crowded living space on the planet, which means the ordinary condition of life on this world is not the green field and the blue sky. The ordinary condition is cold black water, thousands of feet thick, in which most of the inhabitants glow. A pale ring drifts by, 3 feet away, turning as it goes. It pulses once along its rim, a slow traveling wave of light, and then it dims down and rejoins the dark. Nothing here is showing off. Everything here is saying something. The lights are not decoration. Every one of them is doing a job, and mostly we can guess the job, and sometimes we cannot. The simplest use is a shout for help. A small shrimp caught by something will throw out a cloud of glowing fluid into the water, a bright smear hanging in the black, then swim away from it while the light stays behind. Whatever was holding, it is now the brightest object for a long way in every direction, which is a very bad thing to be when larger animals are watching for exactly that. The trick works. It has been recorded many times. There is a jelly that does something similar with its whole body. Handled, it lights up in a spinning pattern of blue that runs around and around. The effect from a distance is a small siren in the water. The name people gave it is the burglar alarm, and it is a fair name. The jelly is not trying to frighten anything. It is trying to be noticed by something bigger than the animal that has hold of it. Then there is the lure. A great many hunters down here carry a light out in front of the mouth, on a stalk or a filament, held still or twitched gently. Small animals in the dark move towards small lights, because in this water a small light very often means food. It is a hard habit to have, and it is very old and it has never been fixed. Some of the lights are conversation. Certain lanternfish carry patches of light near the tail, whose arrangement differs between males and females, and between one species and its neighbors. In a black ocean where 2 animals of the same kind might pass within 10 feet without knowing it, a pattern of lights is a way of saying which sort you are and what you want. Whether it works the way we think it works is not settled. It is very hard to watch a courtship that takes place at half a mile down, in the dark, between fish the size of a finger. There is one light down here that breaks the color rule entirely. A large deep-sea dragonfish carries a lamp under each eye that shines dark red instead of blue. Almost nothing at this depth can see red, So the animal is carrying a lantern that lights its surroundings without announcing itself. It sees nothing sees it seeing. That may be the closest thing in the ocean to a private light. Hold your own hand up in front of your face. It is invisible. You could touch your nose with it and be surprised by the arrival. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. The answer living things arrived. It was not to fight the dark. It was to speak in it. A double flash goes off somewhere below, blue and cold. Then the water closes over the place. Keep still. Something is coming up beside you, and it is in no hurry. It arrives as a change in the texture of the black, then as an outline, then as an animal, a squid about the length of your forearm, hanging almost vertically in the water with its arms held together above it in a soft point. It is not swimming so much as holding position, with the thin fins along its body rippling, a small continuous wave running down each side. The color of it moves. That is the first thing you notice, and it is hard to look away from. Bands of deep red pass over the skin, then thin out to a pale pearl, then flood back darker at the head. The changes take a second or two each. There are thousands of tiny sacs of pigment in the skin, and each one has muscles around it, and the animal opens and closes them by the thousand. Nobody is quite sure what a squid down here is saying with any of it. On a reef in daylight, color changes mean plenty of understood things. In water this dark at this depth, with almost no light to reflect, it is not obvious who the audience is. One reasonable idea is that the skin is doing brightness rather than color, tuning how much of the faint glow from above it gives back. Another is that other squid can see far better than we assume. Anyone who tells you firmly which it is has gone past what has been measured. It turns without appearing to move. The eye comes around and it is a large eye, gold-rimmed, with a black pupil shaped like a crescent. It looks at you the way a horse looks at something in a hedge. There is nothing hostile in it. There may be nothing at all in it. That too is not settled. Squid down here live fast and briefly. Most species of this size are done inside a year or two. They grow at a rate that would be alarming in anything with a skeleton, spawn once, and are finished. In that short life, this animal will have gone up with the rising layer every night and back down every morning, 1,000 feet or more each way, twice a day, hundreds of times. They are also in sheer weight, one of the great crowds of the ocean. The squid of the open water are the main food of sperm whales, of many seabirds, of tuna, of seals in the far south. There are so many of them that whole, large animals are built around eating nothing else. It shifts its arms. There is a small pale flicker somewhere near the base of them. Then the body angles away from you, and 2 beats of the fins take it out of range of your eyes entirely. That is the whole visit. 10 seconds, maybe 15, and no sound at all. The dark closes up behind it. It keeps no mark. Most of the animals down here are soft. That is worth sitting with for a moment, because everything land teaches you is the other way around. On land, an animal of any size needs a frame, bone or shell or hard plates, something to hold the shape up against the pull of the ground. In water, the pull is mostly cancelled. A body the same density as seawater does not need holding up at all. It can be built of almost nothing, and the sea is full of animals that took that offer. A jellyfish is around 95 parts water in every 100. Lay one on a rock in the sun, and after a day there is a faint stain and nothing else. The animal is a thin sheet of living tissue, arranged around a great deal of seawater. It works perfectly well, and it has worked for a very long time. Jellyfish of recognizable shape were already drifting in the sea before there were fish, before there were plants on land, before there were bones anywhere. One comes past you now, moving under its own power, slow and even. The bell is the size of a dinner plate and clear as a rinsed glass. It opens and closes with a rhythm you can watch. A squeeze and a rest, a squeeze and a rest, pushing a little water behind it each time. Below the bell, tentacles trail for 6 or 7 feet, so fine that they show only where they cross something else. That fineness is the whole hunting method. The animal is not chasing. It drifts through a black room with a net of threads behind it. Every so often the net touches a small swimming thing, and the stinging cells fire on contact, without any decision being made anywhere. There is no eye involved, and no brain to speak of. There is a ring of nerves, and a set of simple light sensors, and that is the entire nervous system. And it has been enough for 600 million years. Reach out slowly, and let your fingers pass under the bell without touching. You can feel the pulse of it in the water, a soft push against the back of your hand, then nothing, then another. It is like standing near a curtain in a draft. The advantage of a watery body down here is not just cheapness. Water does not compress. An animal made of water can go from the surface to the deep without anything inside it being squeezed, because there is no air anywhere in it to squeeze. Depth costs it nothing. That is why so many of the animals that make the long nightly climb are jellies and not fish. Softness has outlasted almost everything sharper. The bell drifts out of your reach, going down at its own pace. You follow it. It is midnight on the surface now. Somewhere far above your head the swell is still running. The stars have swung a good way west. The flat shine on the water has gone entirely. The rising layer is up there feeding in the cold. A ship, if one were passing, would show a masthead light and a long soft wake full of blue sparks. None of that is happening here. Stop for a moment at 2,000 feet and take stock of what midnight means where you are. The water is black. The water was black at 8 in the evening. It will be black at 6 in the morning and black at noon tomorrow. It was black on the night the first city was built, on the night the last of the great reptiles went out of the world, and on every night before that. The word midnight has no work to do at this depth. Neither does noon. There is only one condition here, and it does not change. That is the thing worth carrying with you tonight. Depth is not distance in this ocean. Depth is time. Going down through this water is going backward past everything that ever depended on the sun, into the far larger part of the planet that never did. Feel where you are. The cold has settled properly into you now, and even cold with no drafts in it, the same at your feet as at your neck. The pressure has become something you no longer notice unless you think about it. Then it is unmistakable, a firm hold from every direction at once. Your ears are quiet. There is no wind here, and there has never been wind here, and there is no word in the water for weather. Sound is the only thing that still connects the two worlds. Above you, a storm 400 miles off is putting a low grumble into the water that will pass this depth in a few minutes and go on for hours after. It arrives as a pressure in the chest rather than a noise in the ears. It has no direction you could point to. Look up. There is nothing to see. The last hint of the surface glow went out several hundred feet ago, and the black above your head is exactly as black as the black below your feet. Turn slowly, all the way around, and every direction gives you the same answer. Nothing is wrong. That is the part worth remembering. This is not an empty place or a hostile one. It is a full place with the lights off. There are more living things within 100 feet of you now than in 100 feet of forest, and almost all of them are small, and none of them are interested in you. Somewhere off to the right, at a distance you cannot judge, a soft blue-green line switches on and travels sideways and switches off. That is all midnight is here. A line of light, then black again. Something is coming. It gives itself away before you see it. There is color running along its sides, and there is no color anywhere else down here. The animal is about the size and shape of a small pear, and clear as water. Along its body run 8 lines of tiny paddles. They beat in waves, one after another down each line, hundreds of them, and the light they throw off travels with them. Rainbow bands slide from one end to the other, over and over, blue to green to a hint of orange. That color is not light the animal is making. It is a trick of the paddles themselves. Each one splits what light there is into its colors as it moves, the way a soap bubble does. The effect only appears because you have brought your eyes close. In the true dark of this water, with no lamp, the animal would show nothing at all. This is a comb jelly, a sea ctenophore, and it is not a jellyfish. It stings nothing. Where a jellyfish has stinging cells, a comb jelly has sticky ones. It hunts by drifting with 2 long trailing threads out behind it, catching small animals the way flypaper catches. Everything about it is gentle and slow and slightly ridiculous, and it is one of the most successful body plans in the sea. Watch the paddles for a while. This is the largest animal on Earth that swims with hairs. Every other swimmer of any size uses muscle, a tail, a fin, a jet. These 8 rows of beating combs are the same equipment a single cell uses to move itself along, scaled up and multiplied until it can push a whole body. Nothing larger has ever managed it. Comb jellies are also very old. There was a long argument among people who study these things about whether comb jellies or sponges branched off first from the rest of the animal kingdom. That question sounds small, and it is not. Whichever answer turns out to be right changes the story of how nerves and muscles first appeared. It went back and forth for the better part of 2 decades, and the weight of the evidence now sits with the comb jellies. This soft, transparent thing beside your hand belongs to the oldest branch of the animal family. They are fragile past belief. A comb jelly brought up in a net arrives as a smear of jelly and a few threads. Almost everything known about how they actually live had to be learned by going down and looking, which is expensive and slow, or by keeping them in tanks with rounded corners, because a straight corner will tear one apart. It drifts past your shoulder, the rainbow running down its flanks in slow, repeated waves. When it turns, the bands turn with it. When it stops, they fade to nothing, and the animal becomes invisible again. A shape you can only find by the water it interrupts. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. A rainbow at this depth is an accident of geometry that nothing was ever meant to see. It moves off, still beating, still throwing colors at nobody. The dark takes it back. There is something else out there, and it has been there for some time. It runs vertically through the water, a fine pale line, thinner than a shoelace. It goes up out of your sight and down out of your sight. Follow it upward with your eyes, and it does not end. Follow it down, and the same. You are looking at a small part of the middle of an animal, and there is no way to see the whole of it from here. This is a siphonophore. The longest one ever recorded was measured off the coast of Australia, coiled in a slow spiral in open water. The outer ring of the spiral came to roughly 150 feet across, and the animal strung out along it was estimated at nearly 400 feet from end to end. That makes it, by length, arguably the longest animal on the planet, longer than any whale that has ever lived. Arguably, because it is not exactly one animal. A siphonophore is a colony. It begins as a single fertilized egg, like anything else. But as it grows, it buds off unit after unit, and the units do not separate. Each one keeps a job. Some do nothing but swim, contracting in sequence to move the whole string along. Some do nothing but feed, hanging down with stinging threads. Some do nothing but reproduce. None of them could survive alone, and none of them is the animal. The string is the animal. Move closer, carefully. The main line is a stem, and off it, at even spacings, hang the feeding parts with their threads. The threads spread out into the water as a curtain, a good many feet across. It is a wall of fine, invisible lines hanging in black water, and everything that swims into it stops there. The colony pulses, somewhere far above you, out of sight. The swimming units are contracting one after another. The movement runs down the stem as a slow shiver. The whole thing rises perhaps the length of a room, then stops, then hangs. Some kinds carry lights along the stem and flick a red glow on the ends of the tentacles, twitching them the way a fisherman twitches bait. Small fish come to look. A few kinds are among the more important hunters in the open sea, which is a strange thing to say about an animal you could break by breathing on it. They are also almost impossible to study. Nets destroy them. Most of what is known comes from a few hours of camera time, spread over decades at great cost. When somebody finally saw that spiral off Australia, it was news among people who had spent their whole working lives waiting to see one properly. Given that much dark and that much room, things have grown long and thin and patient. The pale line hangs beside you, going up and going down. You never see either end. Everything above you has weight, and all of it is resting on your shoulders. At the surface, the air alone puts about 15 pounds on every square inch of you, and you have never once noticed it. Water is far denser. Every 33 feet of it adds the same amount again. So at 33 feet, you carry twice the load you carry in a garden. At 66, 3 times. At 2,000 feet, roughly 60 times. And you have been past that for a while now. Take that gently, because there is nothing frightening in it. Water does not squeeze water. Your body is mostly water, and water simply refuses to be compressed to any degree that matters. A column of sea miles deep will reduce its volume only slightly. Whatever is liquid in you is essentially unbothered. Only the pockets of gas care. And in the animals down here there mostly are no pockets of gas. That is why the deep sea is full of soft things. A jelly, a squid, a worm, a sea cucumber. No lungs, no swim bladder, no air anywhere. Such a body can move from 1,000 feet to 10,000 and back, and feel nothing worth mentioning. The pressure that would crush a submarine passes straight through it. What pressure does affect is the smaller machinery. Proteins are folded shapes, and at these loads the folds start to be pushed out of true. Deep-living animals carry a compound in their tissues that props those shapes up, and the amount of it in the body rises steadily with the depth the animal lives at. Measure the compound in a fish, and you can make a fair guess at where it was caught. It also turns out that the same chemistry sets a limit. Past about 27,000 feet, the trick stops working, which may be why the deepest fish anyone has found live at around that line and no deeper. Notice how little you feel. There is a firmness along the whole surface of you, and it is completely even. Nothing is pressing harder on your back than on your front. There are no edges to it. It is more like being underneath a heavy quilt than being held by anything. The sounds of your own body are close and clear. Your heartbeat is somewhere in the ear rather than the chest. When you move an arm, the water resists and then lets go, and the resistance is smooth all the way through. Above you now is more than 2,000 feet of ocean, and above that, air all the way out to the black. Below you, the water goes down another 2 miles and more. You are in the thickest part of the middle, and it is holding you. Let it. There is nothing here you need to hold up. The cold down here is not a snap. It is not the cold of a January doorstep, sharp and full of information. It is even and complete, and it has been the same for millions of years. Almost the entire deep ocean sits between about 34 and 39 degrees on the household thermometer. That is true under the tropics and true under the ice. At every longitude, in every basin, the bright warm surface layer is a lid on a very large cold room. If you took the ocean as a whole and asked what temperature it is, the answer is close to freezing. The pleasant water people swim in is the exception. Cold changes the speed of everything. Chemistry slows when it is cold. Muscles work more slowly. Food is digested more slowly. A wound closes more slowly. Growth, in particular, becomes an unhurried business. A fish that would take 2 years to reach full size in warm water may take 20 here. It may then keep going for a century. The oldest fish anybody has aged properly was a rockfish from the northern Pacific, past 200 years. Some deep corals have been dated at more than 4,000 years, still growing, adding a hair's width in a decade. There are clams down here that were already full-grown 400 years ago. Cold buys that. It is the reason so many deep animals live in a way that would look, from the surface, like doing nothing at all. Feel your own hands, slow and a little clumsy, and content to be. Down here, that is not a warning. That is the local pace. There is nowhere to get to before morning, because there is no morning. The other thing cold buys is patience with hunger. Food arrives here as snow and as the occasional windfall. And between windfalls there can be months. A warm, fast body would starve. A cold, slow one can wait. Many deep-sea fish carry very little muscle and a great deal of watery tissue. They hang almost motionless in the black, burning nearly nothing, and they can go a very long time between meals without complaint. There is a fish down here that eats perhaps a few times a season and thinks nothing of it. There are others that will not move at all unless something touches them. It has been cold for nearly as long. Notice how little you want to move now. That is right. Let the water do the small work of holding you, and let everything else go slack. Somewhere below, a light comes on and goes off. Nothing hurries to it. It is still snowing. It has not stopped since dusk, and it will not stop tonight or this year. Hold a hand out flat and wait. Within a minute something lands on it, then another. And if you leave the hand there long enough, a thin gray fur of it collects along your fingers. The flakes are smaller here than they were at the top, because most of the larger ones have been eaten or have broken up on the way down. Look at the fall against the black. When you are still and the water is still, you can see that the flakes are not going straight down. They wander. They drift sideways for a foot, catch on some slow current, come back. A flake can spend a month in this middle water without ever reaching the floor, held up by nothing, endlessly turning. Everything down here is waiting on this. In a forest, the food falls once a year and then rots on the ground. In the open ocean, the food falls constantly and thinly, at a rate that would starve any land animal. The whole economy has adjusted to that trickle. The waiting takes different shapes. Some animals hang in the water with nets of mucus spread out around them, sheets larger than the animal itself, sticky and almost weightless, and they let the snow accumulate on the sheet and then eat the sheet. One kind builds a house of mucus around itself the size of a football, with filters inside, pumps water through, and abandons the whole house when the filters clog. It builds a new one within the hour. The discarded houses sink, full of trapped food, and become some of the fattest snowflakes in the sea. Others simply put out arms and wait. Others swim slowly through the fall with their mouths open, the way a whale does at the surface, only very much smaller. There is a smell down here, or something the mind reads as one. Nothing sharp, something faintly like wet paper and old rock, cold enough that it barely registers. Reach out and take one flake between two fingers. It comes apart. It was never solid. It was a loose crowd of particles that had found each other. The pieces drift on separately and will very likely find each other again lower down. What lands on the floor at the end is a fine pale ooze made of the remains of things that lived in the sunlight. Every inch of the deep seabed is built out of that, layer on layer, at a rate of an inch or two every 1,000 years. The floor of the ocean is an archive of the surface, written slowly in the dark. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. It has been snowing for nearly as long. Let it fall past you. Let it land where it lands. Keep going down. Somewhere in the last few hundred feet, the final photon from the sun gave up. There is no marker for it. You do not pass through a curtain. It is more that at some point you realize the black above you, and the black below you have become the same black, that you cannot tell, with your eyes closed or open, which way is up. Below about 3,000 feet, sunlight is finished. Not dim, finished. Instruments built to count single particles of light find none at all past that line. On the clearest day, under the brightest tropical noon, whatever happens down here from now on happens without any help from the sun's light. And it always has. This layer has a name that suits it. The midnight zone runs from 3,000 feet down to something like 13,000. By volume, it is the largest single space where anything lives on this planet by a very wide margin. Nearly all of it has never been visited. Ships have crossed above it for centuries without anyone below to notice. Hang still for a while. The water is around 38 degrees and does not vary. The pressure is holding you evenly on all sides. There is no current you can feel, though there is one, slower than a person walking, moving water that will not touch the surface again for 1,000 years. Your ears bring you almost nothing. Far off, a low pulse, so low it is more a change in the chest than a sound. Nothing near. The dark has a quality that surface dark never has. A dark room at home is full of shapes you know. The eye keeps working, finding the door frame, the edge of the ceiling. Here the eye finds nothing to work on at all, and after a while it stops trying. And the sensation that follows is not blindness. It is closer to lying with your eyes shut in a large warm room. Your body starts using other things instead. The pressure on your skin, the small drift of the water, the sound of your own breathing. There is nothing here that has ever needed to know what a day looks like. And yet the place is not lifeless. A camera lowered anywhere into this layer, left running long enough, will always find something in the frame eventually. A jelly, a small pale fish, a shrimp working past on many legs. Never a crowd, always something. Wait a moment and one arrives. A fish about the length of your hand, pale gray, moving without any apparent effort, its fins barely stirring. It comes into the range of your eyes, holds level with you for a few seconds and drifts on. It has enormous eyes for the amount of light available. What it hopes to see with them is a fair question, and it has not been well answered. Then it is gone, and the black closes. The snow keeps coming down through it, at the rate it has kept all night. Nothing about that changes. Light dies quickly in water. Sound does the opposite. Sound moves through the sea about 4.5 times faster than through air. It holds together over distances that would seem absurd on land. Shout on a hillside, and you are heard a mile off at most. Make a low note in this water, and in the right layer, it will still be a note 1,000 miles away. That right layer is close to where you are hanging now, Air is one of the odder pieces of physics in the ocean. The speed of sound in seawater depends on temperature and on pressure, and those two work against each other going down. As you descend, the cooling water slows sound. Then the temperature stops falling, and the rising pressure begins to speed it up again. So there is a depth where sound travels more slowly than anywhere above or below it. And that depth acts like a groove. A sound that enters it cannot easily leave. Any wave that starts to angle upward is bent back down. Any wave angling down is bent back up. The sound stays trapped between, running horizontally, losing very little, going and going. The groove sits at roughly 3,000 feet in temperate water and shallower toward the poles. You are near it. Listen properly. Put your head back and stop moving, and give it a minute. There is a hum first, wide and low, made of distant weather and every wave breaking on every shore for hundreds of miles. Under that, a series of small clicks evenly spaced, then a pause, then a burst too fast to count. A sperm whale hunting, somewhere below and away, working the dark by sound the way you would work a strange room with a hand out in front of you. Then, faint underneath both, a long, low moan that rises very slightly and falls again, and lasts almost half a minute. That is not near you. That may be hundreds of miles away. People did not know sound behaved this way until the middle of the last century. When it was worked out, the first use was practical and military. The listening posts that were built to hear submarines ended up recording something nobody had ordered. Whales, enormous quantities of whale sound, from all over the ocean basins, at frequencies below what a person standing on a deck could ever hear. The measure of it is still argued over. Whether a blue whale's call really carries across a whole ocean, or merely across a large part of one, depends on assumptions about the water and the noise, and different studies land in different places. What is agreed is that these are among the loudest and lowest sounds any living thing makes, that the ocean carries them further than anything ought to be carried. In water like this, hearing has always been the sense that mattered most. Another click, another pause. The hum stays underneath everything, the way a room tone does. It does not stop. The moan comes again, and this time it goes on. It starts below the bottom of what you would normally call a note, so low that you feel it in the sternum before you hear it. A slow pressure that rises and falls. It climbs a little, holds, slides down, and stops. There is a gap of perhaps 10 seconds. Then the same shape again, near enough identical. This is a song, or the beginning of one. A humpback singing properly will keep this up for hours, working through a set order of phrases, arriving back at the start, going through it again. A full cycle can run half an hour and the whale will repeat it, and then repeat it, sometimes through most of a night. The songs change. That is the part that still surprises people who work on them. Every whale in a population sings the same song in a given season, and over the months that song drifts, a phrase lengthening here, a new sound entering there. Every singer picks up the change and carries it. In the Pacific, songs have been tracked moving from one population to the next, west to east, arriving a season or two later like a tune traveling by word of mouth. What the song is for is not settled. It is males who sing, mostly, and mostly in the breeding season. So the obvious guess is courtship. The obvious guess has some trouble with the details, because females do not always seem to come, and males sometimes join the singer instead. There are ideas about spacing, about display between males, about something closer to a shared signal. A flat answer about what whale song means would be more than the evidence can carry. Hang still and take the sound in. It arrives from no direction. Low sound in water does not let you point at it. It simply is, all around you, in your chest and the bones behind your ears. The whale itself may be 60 miles east. It may be nearer. There is no way to know from here, and it does not matter. The singer is not down where you are. Humpbacks stay near the top, and a singing whale usually hangs head down a few dozen feet below the surface, motionless, for minutes at a stretch. So the sound has come down from that lit and starry world, entered the deep water, found the groove and traveled. Air is one of the few things that gets in. Almost nothing else from up there arrives here. No light, no warmth, no weather, no sense of the hour. The sound arrives. A whale singing under the stars fills a room of the ocean the size of a country. Everything in that room, at every depth, hears it whether it has any use for it or not. The phrase comes round again. Same rise, same long fall, same silence after. You could set a clock by it, if a clock meant anything here. Let it go on. It will for hours. There is a fish hanging in the water off to your right, and it has not moved since before you noticed it. It is small, smaller than the stories suggest, about the size of a plum. The body is dark and soft, more water than muscle. Above the mouth, a thin stalk arches forward. At the end of the stalk there is a pale bulb, and the bulb is lit. The light is a steady blue-white, and it does not come from the fish at all. Bacteria live in that bulb and they glow, and the fish grows a home for them and lets them stay. She is doing nothing. That is her whole method, and it is the correct one down here. Food in this layer is thin past imagining. There is snow, but snow does not keep a hunter alive. Something the size of a hand may pass within reach once a week, or once a month, and there is no way to find it by searching, because searching costs more than it earns. So the fish holds still, spends almost nothing, and lets the light do the work. Small animals in the dark come to small lights. She waits with the patience of something that has nothing else to spend. Her body is built entirely around that arrangement. The muscle is minimal. The bones are light and poorly formed. The stomach can stretch a long way, because a meal may have to last a season. Most of the time she is doing less work than you are doing lying in bed. She twitches the lure once, a slow, small movement, and then stops again. There is one more thing about these fish, and it gets far less attention than the lamp. The males of many of these species are tiny, a small fraction of the female's size. They carry no lure of their own, and in some kinds no working gut at all. A male hatches, and his whole task is to find a female. He may meet one other fish in a lifetime. He has large eyes and enormous nostrils for it, and he follows a scent through the black. If he finds her, he attaches, and in some species he stays. The tissues join. He becomes a small permanent part of her side, drawing what he needs from her. She carries him for the rest of her life. A female has been found carrying more than one. How the two bodies manage to live joined together, without rejecting one another, is a real puzzle. The answer, as far as it is understood, is an immune system that works like nothing else with a spine. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. The solutions have gone in directions nothing on the surface would have thought of. The lamp burns quietly. She has not moved again. She may not move before morning. Morning is a word from somewhere else. Between the last of the light and the floor there is a great deal of nothing much. It deserves a few minutes of its own. Most descriptions of the deep sea hurry through this part to reach the vents and the trenches. That is understandable, and it gives a false picture. By volume, this open middle water is nearly the whole of the living world. Everything else, all the reefs and forests and grasslands and every shallow sea, is a rim around the edge of it. Drift here without going anywhere. There is no floor beneath you within a mile. There is no surface above you within a mile either. There is nothing to hide behind, and nothing to hold on to in any direction ever. For the entire life of anything born here, that single fact shapes every animal in this water. You cannot hide behind an object, so you hide by being transparent. And a great many animals here are as clear as the water they sit in. You cannot hide behind an object, so you hide by being red, which is the same as black where there is no red light. You cannot hide behind an object, so you hide by lighting your own belly to match the faint sky. 3 different answers to one problem, arrived at separately over and over. You also cannot rely on meeting anyone. In water this empty, 2 animals of the same kind may never cross paths, hence the enormous nostrils on some males, the lights arranged in species-specific patterns, the habit some fish have of gathering at particular depths where the odds are slightly better. Feel the emptiness of it in your own body. Turn a slow circle. Reach out in any direction, and your hand finds only water, at the same temperature as the water it left. There is no texture anywhere. Nothing scrapes, nothing knocks, nothing brushes past. It is the least eventful place a person can be. That emptiness is not dullness. It is the ordinary condition of most of the space where life exists. Every one of us grew up in a very unusual corner of the planet where you can lean on things. The snow falls through it. A jelly the size of a coin passes at the edge of sight, so clear that you see it mostly by the small red stomach hanging in the middle. That stomach is red because whatever it ate had a light in it, and red hides the glow from anything below. There is a slow drift here that will carry a floating thing a mile or 2 in a day. It is moving you now, very gently, and you cannot feel it because everything around you is moving too. Nothing arrives, nothing needs to. Rest in the middle of it a while longer. Then we go down. The last part of the descent is the longest, and by now it hardly registers as movement at all. 10,000 feet. 11. The pressure has gone past 300 times what it was in the garden, and it is still even, still without edges. Cold has settled into a steady 36 degrees or so. The water is clearer here than anywhere above. There is less life in it to cloud it. A lamp would throw a beam further than it could at the surface. On the best day of the year, something changes in the feel of the water before you can see anything. It is hard to name. The snow ahead of you seems slightly thicker. There is a faint sense of a boundary, the way a room feels different when a door behind you is open. Then the first hint of the bottom arrives, and it arrives as a smell that is not a smell, and a change in the sound that is not a sound. It is nearer. Everything is nearer. At around 13,000 feet, the water below begins to give something back, not light of its own. Turn a lamp downward now, and the beam would go out, and then find a pale gray nothing, flat, featureless, going away from you in every direction, softly rounded wherever the light touched it. That is the floor of the world, and it is made of the sky. Every inch of that pale gray is the remains of things that lived in the sunlight thousands of years ago. The shells of creatures too small to see, the fine dust of continents blown out over the water, the leavings of the whole lit surface, settled and settled and settled. In some places it lies thousands of feet thick, on rock that is younger than the sediment resting on it. Slow down as you come to it. There is no need to arrive quickly, and every reason not to. The last 100 feet take as long as you like. The floor comes up under you the way a beach comes up under a boat, without a shore. There is no line where the water stops. The gray simply becomes more definite, and then it is a surface, and then you are a body's length above it. Put a hand down and let it settle. The sediment takes your fingers with no resistance at all. It is finer than flour and softer than ash. It makes a slow, pale cloud that hangs where you disturbed it and does not clear. Look at that cloud. It will still be settling 10 minutes from now. On the surface, a footprint in sand lasts one tide. The mark of your hand here will be visible for years. Nothing has ever come along to sweep the floor. You have arrived at the bottom of the ocean. Lie back on it. The first impression is that there is nothing here, and the first impression is wrong. Lie still on the sediment. It gives under you a little, and then holds. There is no current worth the name. Though there is enough movement to lay the finest dust in faint lines you can see if you look sideways along the surface. It is the softest ground on the planet. There is no stone, no root, no grit, nothing that would mark a knee. Look out across it. Under a lamp it would be pale gray-brown, going away flat in every direction, gently rolling at a scale so large you would never notice, unbroken for hundreds of miles. The abyssal plains are the flattest surfaces anywhere on Earth, flatter than any desert, because nothing here has ever been shaped by wind or rain or ice, only by falling dust, which lands everywhere equally. Now look closer, at a patch the size of a tabletop. There are tracks in it, thin, meandering, some of them crossing, some looping back on themselves. A few are grooves, as if something was dragged. Others are lines of small paired dents. They wander with no urgency in any of them, and they are everywhere once you start noticing. There are holes too, small round openings, the width of a pencil, with a low ring of sediment pushed up around each one. Some have a fine star pattern raked into the mud around them, made by something living inside, reaching out in every direction as far as it can, and then reaching again a little further along. There are mounds the size of a fist, and shallow depressions the size of a dinner plate. Here and there, a pale sponge on a stalk, standing a foot above the mud like a small flag. None of these things are moving. That is the deception. Everything here is moving. It is simply moving at a speed the eye reads as stillness. A track a foot long might have taken a day to make. That star pattern was raked over the course of a week. The living things here are spread thin. Take any patch of this floor a yard across, and there may be one animal on it large enough to see, or none. Take the same patch of a shallow seabed, and you would count hundreds. The deep plain is not empty. It is dilute, which is a different thing. It is dilute because everything that lives here lives on that thin fall of snow. There is a smell of nothing at all. There is no sound but the low room tone of the whole ocean, which by now you have stopped hearing. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. The mud has kept a record of every one of them. Something moves at the edge of the light. Slowly. Give it time and it will come. It comes over a low rise in the mud, and it takes it a long time. The animal is about the length of a loaf of bread, pale pink and slightly see-through, with a row of soft tube feet underneath, and a fringe of short tentacles at the front end. It is a sea cucumber, a holothurian, and there are more of them down here than anything else you could easily see. On some stretches of the deep plain, they make up the great bulk of the living weight on the floor. Watch how it goes. The tentacles reach forward, press into the sediment, gather a mouthful of the top layer, and fold back to the mouth. Then again. It is eating the floor, or rather eating the thin skin of fallen snow lying on the floor, and it moves forward only because it has finished with the patch beneath it. That is the trade of nearly everything down here. The snow lands on the mud and lies there. The animals of the plain go slowly over the surface, taking the top of it, the way a person works along a beach picking up only what came in on the last tide. Behind the animal the mud is turned and darker, and that is the track you saw earlier. Nothing about it is arranged for looking or for thinking. It grazes by touch and by chemistry, working the mud through itself. And if you laid a hand on it, It would draw in slightly and then go on. Some kinds of these animals swim. That is a genuinely odd thing to know about a sea cucumber. There are deep species with a webbed sail along the back that can lift off the mud and drift, tumbling gently along in the near bottom current for a while, before settling somewhere else. It is not fast and it is not graceful. It works. Some are transparent enough that you can see the mud they have swallowed as a dark stripe inside them, moving slowly along the length of the body over the hours. They are also taken together, a serious force on this floor. Between them they turn over the surface layer of the whole abyssal plain, everywhere, constantly. The mud you are lying on has been through the gut of something like this several times already, and it will go through again. Nobody is sure how long one of these animals' lives. They are soft. They leave no hard part behind that could be counted like a tree ring. They are almost impossible to keep alive in a tank at the surface. Estimates run from a few years to a few decades, and they are estimates. It is a plain example of how much remains unmeasured about the most common large animal on the largest habitat on this planet. Off to one side, another crosses the light and does not notice the first. There is no schooling here and no company. Two animals of the same species may spend a whole life within a few hundred yards of each other and never meet. Nothing here rewards hurry. The crossing takes as long as it takes. The first one reaches the edge of what you can see. It keeps going. Away to the left, where the mud lifts slightly, there is something standing up. It is a sea pen, and the name is a good one because it looks like an old quill stuck upright in the ground. A single stalk goes down into the sediment and anchors. Above it, a soft feathered blade stands maybe 2 feet high, angled a little, holding still in water that has no wind in it. That blade is not one animal. Like the long colony we passed in the middle water, a sea pen is a crowd of tiny units living on a shared stem, each with a ring of small arms, each doing its own catching. What holds them up is a thin rod of a stiff protein down the middle, which is as close as anything gets to a skeleton on this floor. Nearby, further out, there is a sponge on a stalk, and it is nothing like a bath sponge. It is a thin cup of glass. The frame is built out of silica, the same stuff as window glass, laid down in needles and fused into a lattice so fine and so regular that engineers have taken it apart to learn how it is done. Some of those glass fibers carry light better than a manufactured cable, which is a curious thing to grow in a place with no light to carry. Inside one kind of glass sponge, quite often there are 2 small shrimp. They arrive as larvae, swim in through the lattice, feed on what the sponge's current brings, grow, then find that they can no longer get out through the holes they came in by. They stay for the rest of their lives, a pair in a glass room. In Japan, the dried sponge with the 2 shrimp inside has been given as a wedding gift, for reasons that need no explanation. The garden here is not a garden in any sense a gardener would accept. There is no green. Nothing grows from the ground upward. Nothing photosynthesizes. What stands up out of the mud does so for one reason only. A foot or 2 above the floor, the water moves slightly faster, and a filter feeder that gets up out of the still layer catches more. Everything is spaced far apart. A pen here, a sponge 30 yards off, then nothing at all for a long way. The pace of it is hard to hold in mind. A glass sponge may take 100 years to reach the height of your knee. Some of the branching corals on deep rock have been dated at thousands of years old, and were already standing when the pyramids were new. The garden has all the time it will ever need. The blade of the sea pen leans very slightly and stops. Nothing else moves at all. Push your hand into the floor and feel how far it goes. There is no bottom to it within reach. Below your palm, the ooze continues down, and it keeps its softness for a long way before it packs into something firmer. Below that firmer layer there is more, and below that more again. In parts of the deep ocean, the sediment lies thousands of feet thick before it reaches rock. All of it fell out of the water, every particle. Think about the rate for a moment, because this is where depth turns properly into time. On the open abyssal plain, far from any land, the floor gains somewhere between half an inch and 1 inch every 1,000 years. In some very quiet basins, it is less than that. 1,000 years of the surface world above, of storms and ice ages and empires, and the whole record of writing, arrives down here as a layer you could cover with a fingernail. The dust in the top inch or two fell during the lifetime of the Roman roads. Go down the width of a hand, and there were no cities anywhere on Earth. Go down the length of a foot, and you are below the last ice age. That is why sediment cores matter so much. Drop a tube into this floor, pull up a column of mud. You have a stack of the sky in order, oldest at the bottom. The shells in each layer belong to surface creatures that recorded the temperature of the water they grew in. Read the chemistry of those shells layer by layer, and the ocean gives you a temperature record going back millions of years, continuous, unbroken by any of the gaps that spoil records on land. Nearly everything known about ancient climate came out of mud, like the mud under your hand. Feel it once more before you take your hand out. It is cold and completely smooth, and has no grain to it. There is nothing sharp anywhere in it. It smells faintly of nothing. Lift your hand slowly. The cloud comes up around it, pale and slow, and it hangs. Watch it hang. On the surface, disturbed silt clears in a minute. Here there is nothing to carry it away. It will drift down through the water over hours and settle in a thin new film exactly where it was. That film is now the newest page. It will be buried by the snow that falls tonight, and that by the snow that falls next year. The mark of your hand will be sealed under a hair's thickness of dust long before anyone is born who might look for it. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. The floor has kept every one of them in order. Take your hand back. Let the cloud settle. Off to the right, the mud is not smooth. Something is scattered across it, dark and round, spaced out like potatoes lifted and left in a field. Go over and pick one up. It is heavier than it looks, and it fits your palm. The surface is black-brown and slightly bumpy, dull rather than shiny, cool the way everything here is cool. It weighs about as much as a large apple. This is a nodule, and it is one of the slowest objects on the planet. It began around something small, a shark's tooth, a fragment of shell, a chip of old rock. Metals dissolved in the seawater and in the mud beneath came out of solution and settled onto that seed in layers, in the dark. If you cut one in half, you find rings, like a tree, hundreds of them going out from the little seed at the middle. The rate of it is difficult to believe even when you know it is true. A nodule grows by something on the order of a few millimeters in 1,000,000 years. Not a year, not 1,000 years. 1,000,000. The one in your hand, the size of a fist, has been sitting in this mud for something like 10 or 15 million years. It began growing here long before any human being existed anywhere. Somehow they stay on the surface. That is a genuine puzzle. Sediment falls at a rate that ought to have buried these things many times over, and yet they lie on top in the open, in enormous fields. Something must keep turning them. Small animals nudging them, currents scouring, a rare disturbance. Nobody has fully settled how it works, and it is one of those small unanswered questions that has been quietly waiting for decades. Around and on the nodule, there is life that lives nowhere else on the plane. In a seafloor of soft mud, a stone is a rare and valuable thing. The surface of every nodule carries a thin crust of small growth, a sponge no bigger than a thumbnail, corals like fine hairs, animals that need something hard to hold on to, and that will not find another chance for miles. Put it down again, in the dent it came out of. The cloud lifts and hangs. These fields are known, and there are people who would like to gather them. What that would do to a floor which recovers at the speed this one recovers at is not settled, and it is not for tonight. This stone has spent most of the history of the ocean, getting to be the size of a fist. Leave it where it lies. Move on across the mud. The plane rises very slightly ahead of you, and there is a shape on it. It is long, longer than a room, longer than a bus, pale against the gray mud and slightly luminous under any light you bring, though it makes no light of its own. Ribs stand up in a double row, curved, evenly spaced, and beyond them a long tapering line of vertebrae runs away and disappears into the sediment. At the near end, there is a jaw the length of a ladder, lying half sunk in the mud. A whale came down here. It is impossible to say when from looking, and it does not matter. Sit with it for a moment. This is not a sad place, though the shape of it is solemn. In the ocean, the arrival of a large whale on the deep floor is the single most generous thing that ever happens to a piece of seabed. Everything else here lives on that thin fall of dust. This is 100 years of snow delivered at once, in one spot, on one afternoon. What follows takes decades. First, the large scavengers come, from a long way off, drawn by scent through the dark. Sleeper sharks and hagfish, crowds of amphipods no bigger than a fingernail, arriving in numbers you would not believe from a floor that looked bare. They work for months, sometimes a year or two, and then they leave. Then come the smaller ones, thousands of them, living in the enriched mud in a ring around the site. Worms and snails and small crustaceans, at densities equal to a rich shallow bay, in a circle a few yards wide on a plain where a yard normally holds nothing. Last, the bones themselves become the habitat. There is a worm without a mouth, or a stomach that grows only on whale bone. It puts down roots the way a plant does, and lets bacteria inside it do the digesting. It was found less than 30 years ago, and nobody had suspected anything like it. The females are the ones you can see, small red plumes standing on the bone. The males are microscopic and live inside the female's tube, dozens at a time. A single whale can hold a community together for 50 years or more. Some estimates go further, because whales sink all over the ocean, and have for millions of years. These places have very likely worked as stepping stones, letting animals that need one cross a plain that offers nothing else. The ribs stand in the mud, evenly spaced, catching your light. The red plumes on them stir very slightly in a current you cannot feel. This is what generosity looks like when it arrives. Leave the site as you found it. The plane closes back in. Half a mile on, there is something else that does not belong. It is a log, a proper one, the length of a car, half buried at one end, the bark long gone and the surface silver gray and split along the grain. Run a hand along it. It is soft, waterlogged, giving slightly under a fingertip, and it is riddled with small round holes. A tree came down a river somewhere, went out past the mouth on a flood, drifted for weeks, took on enough water and sank. There is no other way for wood to get here. It happens more often than you would think. Enough that there are animals in the deep ocean whose entire way of life depends on it. The holes are theirs. There are clams down here that bore into sunken wood and live inside it, eating it, or rather keeping bacteria in their gills that can break down wood on their behalf. A single log can hold thousands of them. They arrive as larvae out of the open water, having found, by some means still not properly understood, a piece of wood in a plain the size of a country. The odds against that are absurd, and yet the wood is always found. Sink a log experimentally on the deep floor and come back a year later, and it will be occupied. Sit down beside it. Under a lamp the grain is still visible, the same grain the tree grew on a hillside, in daylight with birds in it. There is no better reminder that these two worlds are joined than a piece of a forest lying on the abyssal mud with clams inside it. There is a small pale crab on the far end, holding still. Around the base of the log, the sediment is darker and softer than the mud further off, enriched by what has come out of the wood. There are more tracks here than anywhere you have crossed tonight. The wood will last a long while. A trunk this size might feed its community for a decade or two before it goes soft all the way through and settles into the mud. After that, there will be a slightly darker patch on the floor for many years more. Sunken wood, whale bones, hot springs. 3 kinds of island in an ocean of dilute nothing, and animals that specialize in one of them often turn out to be close cousins of animals that specialize in another. The bone worms and the wood clams and the vent animals are not strangers to each other. Something has been island hopping down here for a very long time. Stand up slowly. The mud releases you without a sound. Look back once at the log lying pale on the gray, then leave it and go on. Stop here in the middle of the plain and do nothing at all. This is the quietest place on the surface of this planet, and it is worth spending a while in properly. Turn your lamp off. Now there is nothing, not dimness, not shadow, not the gray that your eyes make in a dark bedroom after an hour. Nothing at all in every direction, above and below and to each side. Listen. The low room tone of the ocean is still there, but it has thinned out. The storm noise from the surface has mostly been absorbed on the way down. There are no waves within 2.5 miles. There is no wind here, no rain, no traffic, no machine, nothing rubbing on anything. Every so often, at intervals of many minutes, there is a small sound with no source you could name, and then nothing again. Feel the water. It is perfectly still against your skin, at the same temperature everywhere on your body, with no draft and no eddy. There is a current here, technically. It moves at a speed you would need instruments to measure. Nothing about it reaches you. Feel the mud under your back. It has taken the shape of you, and it is holding it. Soft the whole way with nothing hard in it, not one grain of sand. There is no smell. There is no taste. There is nothing happening within 100 yards that would register on any sense you own. Most people never experience anything close to this. Even a quiet room has a refrigerator 2 walls away, a car 3 streets over, air moving. Even a desert at night has wind and cooling stone. This is the real thing, the genuine article, and the odd part is that it is not lonely. It is closer to the feeling of a house very late, when everyone in it is asleep and safe. You are the only one awake, and there is nothing at all to do. People who have gone down here in submersibles say the same thing afterward, in different words. The stillness is the part that stays with them, not the animals. They talk about switching the lights off on purpose, sitting in the sphere with the instruments dimmed, and finding that the mind goes quiet along with the outside. Some of them describe it as the most restful hour of their working lives. It is not hard to see why. Down there, nothing is asking anything of anybody. Above your body, there are more than 2 miles of water. Above that, air. Above that, the whole night sky, which is doing its slow turn without you. Down here, it has been night for 4 billion years. Not one of those nights was ever interrupted. There was no first morning here that failed to come, Mourning was never part of the arrangement at all. This place has simply been like this, without variation, since long before anything on land could have noticed either way. Your breathing has slowed. Your hands are open. There is nothing to hold on to, and nothing that needs holding. Stay a moment longer. Then very slightly, the water begins to feel warm. The warmth comes in threads. One moment, the water is the same cold it has been for hours. Then there is a band across your shoulders that is noticeably less cold. Then it is gone, and then it is back. Follow it. The mud ahead of you changes. The soft pale ooze gives way to broken dark rock, angular and glassy at the edges, with cracks running through it. Out of the cracks the water shimmers upward, the way air shimmers over a road in summer. This is a hydrothermal field, and it is one of the few places on this floor where the planet itself comes through. The rock here is young. Seawater sinks into the cracks of it and travels a long way underground. It passes close to the heat below and comes back up carrying whatever it dissolved. Where it comes out slowly, through a wide patch of stone, it arrives merely warm. You could hold a hand in it. Where it comes out fast, through a narrow throat, it arrives hotter than any kitchen oven. It stays liquid only because of the weight of the ocean above. There is a spire ahead, a rough column of mineral built up around one of those throats. It stands maybe as tall as a house. Out of the top of it comes a dark plume, rolling and curling upward, and it looks like smoke, and it is not smoke. The moment the hot water meets the cold ocean, everything dissolved in it comes out solid at once, in a cloud of fine dark particles, and that cloud is what you are seeing. The plume goes up a long way. It rises, spreads out sideways at a level of its own choosing, and drifts off across the plain as a faint haze that can be detected for many miles. The spire itself is growing while you watch, in the sense that it adds material constantly, though nothing about it looks alive. Some of these columns grow several inches a year, which is a startling rate for anything down here. They fall over and start again. Put a hand out toward the shimmer, carefully at the edge. There is warmth on the palm, real warmth, the first you have felt since the top of the ocean, hours ago. It is a strange thing to meet this far down, not out of place so much as unexpected, like finding a lit window in a field. Around the base of the spire, on the warm rock, there is more life in a few square yards than in the last several miles of plain. That is what we came for. Sit down on the cool side and look. Everything you have seen tonight has been living, at one remove or another, on sunlight. The snow that falls through this whole ocean was made in the lit room at the top. The animals of the middle water eat it or eat each other. Even the whale on the plain was made of sunlight, gathered at the surface and delivered downward in one piece. Not here. The crowd around this vent is running on something else entirely. The water coming out of the rock carries chemicals from inside the planet. There are bacteria here that can take those chemicals apart for energy, exactly the way a plant takes apart sunlight. From that energy, they build sugars out of the carbon in the water. The whole thing has a name that sounds harder than it is. Chemosynthesis, which is simply making food from chemistry instead of from light. Everything else here eats those bacteria or houses them, or eats something that did. The bacteria are visible if you look. There are white mats of them on the warm rock, thick as felt, and the surface of the stone under them is slightly furred. There are wisps of the same stuff drifting in the plume. In some places, the water itself is milky with them. Around and on those mats, crabs, pale and blind, moving over the rock in a slow, unbothered way. Small white shrimp in heaps, hundreds together, packed in a way nothing else down here is packed. Limpets, mussels in beds, and here and there a fish that hangs almost still just off the rock and takes what drifts. The importance of this discovery is difficult to overstate, and it happened within living memory. In the middle of the 1970s, a small submarine went down onto a ridge in the eastern Pacific, expecting to find warm water and interesting geology. The scientists on board found a hot spring surrounded by a dense living community 2,500 meters down, and no biologist had been included on the trip because nobody had thought one would be needed. They preserved the specimens in vodka, which was what the ship had. Before that afternoon, the rule was that sunlight was the base of everything alive. After it, the rule had an exception, and the exception turned out to exist along thousands of miles of ridge in every ocean. This is the one corner of it that never wanted a sun in the first place. It also changed what people were willing to say about life elsewhere. If a community this size can run on the chemistry of a warm rock, then sunlight stops being a requirement and becomes merely one option among two. Nothing of the sort has been found anywhere else. What this rock did was make the looking reasonable. The plume rolls upward. The white mats hold still. The crabs go about it slowly. At the base of the spire, there is a stand of them. They are the reason people know what a vent looks like, even if they have never given the deep sea a thought. They grow in clusters, packed close. Each one is a white tube standing up off the rock, stiff as a pipe and taller than your arm. Out of the top of each comes a soft plume, deep red, the color of a beet. The plumes lean together in the drifting warm water and move a little, all of them the same way, like reeds in a slow current. Touch a tube. It is hard and slightly ribbed and completely cool on the outside. Touch a plume very gently, and it withdraws into the tube in an instant and stays there. Wait and it comes back out, unhurried. Here is the thing about this animal. It has no mouth. It has no stomach and no gut of any kind. An adult tube worm cannot eat, has never eaten, and would not know what to do with food. Inside the body, there is an organ that holds nothing but bacteria, in enormous numbers, more than half the animal's weight. The worm supplies them with the chemicals from the vent water and with oxygen from the seawater, carried in that red plume, which is red for the same reason your own tissue is red. The bacteria do the chemistry and make sugars, and the worm lives on what they make. Neither could manage alone. They grow quickly for a deep-sea animal, which is to say they can put on a foot or two in a couple of years when the vent is flowing well. That speed is not generosity, it is necessity. A vent is a temporary thing. The plumbing beneath it shifts. An eruption seals a crack. A field that was crowded can go cold within a few years, and everything living on it ends with it. So the young have to travel. Larvae go up into the water and drift. Some of them find another field, tens or hundreds of miles along the ridge, and settle there. Most do not. How they navigate, and how long they can survive drifting, and how the ridges stay populated over millions of years are questions with partial answers at best. There is something worth sitting with in that. A tube worm begins life with a mouth and a gut like anything else, and uses them once to take in the bacteria it will keep. Then the mouth closes over. The gut is rebuilt into the organ that houses its partners. And from that day, the animal never eats again in any way you would recognize. It has handed the job over entirely. The plumes lean and hold, lean and hold. Warm water passes your hands. Behind you, the cold plain waits with its thin fall of snow, unchanged, going on for 600 miles. None of that long darkness has ever mattered to these animals. They have no eyes to be dark for. The red plumes move together and stop. There is one more thing to see before we go up. It is on the rock wall away from the vent. In the cold again. Come around the shoulder of the outcrop and look into the shadow of the overhang. There is an octopus there, pale lavender, about the size of a dinner plate with the arms folded under her. She is upside down against the rock, arms turned back, and beneath her, glued to the stone in neat rows, there are eggs, perhaps 160 of them, each a translucent teardrop the length of your thumbnail, held in bunches. She has been here a long time. In a canyon off the coast of California, a research team came across a female in exactly this position, and by chance, came back to the same spot again and again over the following years. She was always there, always the same animal, recognizable by her scars, always over the same eggs. They watched her for 4.5 years, without once seeing her eat. That is the longest brooding period recorded for any animal on this planet. Longer than an elephant's pregnancy by years. Longer than most of the small animals in this ocean, live at all. She spends it doing very little, and doing it constantly. She strokes the eggs with the tips of her arms to keep them clean. She pushes water over them so they get oxygen. When something comes near, she shifts her body between it and the rock. Over those years, her skin loses its color, the eye clouds, and she grows visibly thinner, and she does not leave. The reason is the cold. Everything here runs slowly, and an egg developing at 37 degrees takes as long as it takes. There is no way to hurry it. What she buys with those years is size. The young that finally come out of those eggs are large and fully formed, small octopuses rather than larvae, able to hunt from the first hour. In a place this thin, arriving competent may be the only workable strategy. When they go, she goes. Females of most octopus species do not survive the hatching, and there is no evidence this one is any different. That is the ordinary arrangement in this group of animals, and it is not a tragedy so much as the shape of the plan. Look at her a moment longer without a light on her. She has been in this exact posture through seasons and storms and harvests up above, through whole years of surface, whether she has never had any way of knowing about. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years. She has never once needed to know what hour it is. The eggs hang in their rows, pale and even. She moves one arm and settles. It is time to go up. Push off gently from the rock, and let the floor start to fall away. It goes quickly at first, then not at all. The vent field slides beneath you, the pale spire and its dark plume shrinking, then the broken rock, then the gray mud coming back, then only mud. Then the mud is a haze, and then it is gone. Somewhere down there the tracks are still being made, at the speed they are made at. You will not see any of it again tonight. The climb is easier than the descent was, and it is much slower than you expect. There is no rush in it. The water goes by in complete darkness for a long while, and the pressure eases in small stages. The cold stays exactly as it was, because the cold does not change until you are near the top. Snow passes you going the other way. That is the strangest part of going up. All night it has been falling with you, and now it falls against you. Thousands of small pale flakes drifting steadily downward past your face while you rise through them. They have been on their way for weeks. They will be on their way for weeks more. 10,000 feet. 8. Somewhere around 7,000, a small light blinks out to the side, and holds and fades. Then nothing for a long time. Think about what is above you now, because the arithmetic of the night is worth having straight. Everything you have seen since the twilight zone has been in a space that never changes. No seasons, no weather, no light, no day. Everything you are about to pass through is a place where the whole character of the water changes twice every 24 hours, and where every animal has arranged its life around that fact. The line between those two worlds is somewhere around 3,000 feet, and you are coming up on it. There is a thing that happens to people who spend a long while at depth and then start up. The mind does not want to leave. Everything above is busier, brighter, and more demanding, and the body knows it before the thought arrives. Pilots have written about lingering near the bottom past the point of usefulness, doing nothing in particular, putting off the climb. Take that slowly then. There is no hurry in either direction, and the water will hold you at any depth you choose. 5,000. 4. The pressure is easing more noticeably now, and the water is beginning, very slightly, to lose its absolute cold. Then, at some point you cannot pin down, the black above you stops being quite as black as the black below. It is not light. It is the idea of light, the faintest possible difference between one direction and another. And if you had not been down there for so many hours, you would never notice it at all. Up is a direction again. Keep going. You meet them at around 2,000 feet, and they are all coming the other way. Lanternfish first, in ones and twos, then in numbers past counting, sliding down past you in the dim with their belly lights faint against the growing gray. Then the small squid moving in short pushes, their arms trailing, then shrimp and jellies pulsing along, and the fine thick clouds of copepods that make the water look grained. It is the same crowd that came up past you at dusk, and it is going home. Up there the night is nearly over. Somewhere far above, the first gray is in the eastern sky, and the light will follow it. By full morning, there will be no safety anywhere in the top few hundred feet for anything the size of a finger. So they go down to a depth where a hunting eye has almost nothing to work with. They will hang there through the whole of the daylight, doing very little, waiting out the sun. Then this evening, they will come up again. Every one of them will do this again tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night until it stops. Hold still and let them pass. They come by close enough to touch, and none of them touches you. There is no panic in it, and no sound at all. Thousands of small bodies moving in the same direction at the same unhurried pace. The way a crowd leaves a field. It takes a long time for them to finish. Hang in the middle of it, and watch the light come up behind them. It brightens so slowly that you can never catch it changing. The pace of the whole crowd is worth noticing on the way past. Nothing is racing the sun. A lanternfish could cover the last of the climb in an hour, and it does not. The descent is spread out across the whole gray end of the night. Some kinds go down early and deep. Some hang at a middle level and stop there. A few stay near the top all day and take their chances. Which one an animal chooses seems to depend on how easily it can be seen, though the details are still being worked out. The last of them go by. Below them, the water is empty again, and the dark is closing back up over a world that will not notice they have gone. The animals passing you now are the only ones in this ocean with any reason to care about the difference. The gray above is unmistakable now. You are nearly home. The last few hundred feet come slowly, and the ocean gives back its colors in the order it took them. Blue first. Blue was the last to leave on the way down, and it is the first to return. It comes in as a deep, even wash from above with no source anywhere in it. Then green, faintly at the edges of things. Yellow much higher up. Red only in the last few feet, and it arrives all at once, so that your own hand, gray for the whole night, becomes a hand again. The ceiling comes back. Far above you there is a rippled silver sheet, moving, and beyond it a paleness that is not a color yet. Your bubbles go up toward it and take their time about arriving. Break the surface quietly. The air is colder than the water now. There is a small wind that was not there last night, just enough to put a texture on the sea. It smells of salt and cold, and something faintly green. In the east there is a line of gray, and above it the stars are going out from the bottom of the sky upward. It happens without ceremony. One by one they thin out and are not there, and the sky goes from black to slate to a pale wash, and the sea takes each of those colors in its turn. A moment later, a little duller, then a long orange bar on the horizon, and the first of the sun, flattened at the base, going the same way it came. The light lands on the water and stops there. It goes down 100 feet and 100 more, and then it thins to blue, and then it is finished. Beneath that, everything you spent the night in is exactly as you left it. The snow is still falling through the middle water. The pale fish is still hanging with her small lamp lit. The sea cucumber has moved the length of your hand since you saw it. The tube worms lean together in the warm water in the dark. On the rock under the overhang, the mother has not moved and will not for years. None of them has any way of knowing that the sun came up. Down here it has been night for 4 billion years, and it still is. The morning goes on above without needing anything from you. The wind stays low. The swell keeps its slow count, lifting and setting down, lifting and setting down. It will do that all day and all of tomorrow. You can let go now. There is nothing left to follow, and nothing you have to remember. Everything down there will keep on exactly as it is, whether you are awake for it or not. It always has, and that is the kindest thing about it. Sleep well. This was Worlds Before Morning.